Today I've got George with me, who's head of music at Toolroom Records. We've got a few of our old vinyl here, and we're going to kind of talk around tech house, what it's all about, how it's evolved, and what different genres feed into tech house to make it a genre that's become a mainstay of what we do here at Toolroom.
Yeah. I think when you look at it, when you ask what is tech house, I think in its crudest form it was kind of the amalgamation of techno elements within a slower house groove.
Yeah, you're right.
I think when you delve a little deeper, there's a lot of influences, like you say, that kind of make up the genre, from tech, you know, from techno to tribal, progressive, you
electro,
know,
deep, yeah.
And I think it was, when we've gone through these records, it was very much evident then, and I think it clearly is now, you know.
Yeah, true. It was a different time back then. You say, like, sitting in front of us now, we're looking through vinyl. It was a case of, you know, going into record shops, hunting down the tunes that you liked, listening to the guy behind the record shop counter. He'll feed you with the kind of tunes that you're into. But
yeah,
for me, it was very much more the houseier side. You know, I've picked a few out here, things like Tanya, Harry Choo Choo on Bombassa. Anything for me on Tribal was big. Deep Dish, Liberty City, Danny Tenaglia. And then back to the UK with guys like Peace Division, NRK, and labels like 2020.
So I come from a more techno background, so for me, the tunes that were kind of influential, you've definitely got to touch on things by like Dave Angel, you know, Christian Smith and John Selway.
The more funkier side of things,
Yeah, and then moving even into the, you know, your melodic techno from the Detroit guys like Kevin Saunderson, Cole Craig. And then when we're going through the records, there were definitely records there that we could see that cross-pollinated. You know, back in the day, records from Slam, Positive Education on Soma. You know, we have to mention, for us personally, you've got to mention labels like Plastic City, The Time Writer.
Yeah.
Definitely Terry Lee Brown Jr. And then touching on records, you know, from Mr. C, the Yucatec guys. And then it kind of brought us onto records that really, as it moved on, started to have moments. You know, big moments in records like T. Schwartz, Hello Again. And definitely records like this, Mandy, Body Language on Get Physical, you know, it doesn't have a bigger moment than that.
I was influenced back then by the likes of Booker Shade and Trent Moller. They were the two sort of main guys making sort of that kind of music, but their stuff was quite underground, but it was the first time I'd heard like melody in house music for a while. It had been very drummy, progressive-y sounding stuff, and then these guys came along and started incorporating a bit of melody into it, and they did, Booker Shade in particular had done quite a few tracks, of which names I forgot because I'm getting old and senile now, but and so I was like listening to their stuff, I'm like, this is amazing, you know, if I could just sort of incorporate a bit of that sound into this remix. Well, Colombian Soul, was a sort of landmark, I think, for myself, and also it was the first track that I wrote with Mark Knight, so, you know, not a bad start really. Again, Colombian Soul was something that took a while to actually perfect. So first and foremost, it was like amazing to work with Mark because it made me realise what you know, perfectionist the guy is, and how he doesn't just put things out, he just really, you know, gets things right. And also it was like a real marriage of like my sound and his sound. You know, he was kind of, things were going a little bit more techie then. There was the whole the sort of, I can't remember what year it was, 2006 was it? Back then, yeah. It was kind of like electro was fusing, going more minimal, I think. More electro to tech house, I guess it was. So it was like, we still had some sort of electro elements in there, but it was definitely more verging on tech. So I think it was, you know, a sort of genre-defining kind of track in terms of, right, okay, that was electro, that's techno, it's somewhere in between, you know, which is, what's that? That's tech house, right? You know, and so I think, you know, unbeknowingly we kind of, you know, we landed on something which was, you know, this new sound, you know, that was, again, a backlash against the commercialism of electro, but not quite fully down the techno route, I guess.
My musical ambition with Toolroom was to create something new. You know, I really felt there was a gap in the market. At that time, it was pretty polarised. You either had really soulful, funky house, or you had kind of harder music, and there was nothing in the middle, you know, there wasn't anything going on, and I kind of thought there's an opportunity to do something that's commercial in terms of the amount of units we sold and still be credible, and that's what we kind of focused on, is that bit in the middle, and that's what we tried to do, you know, because there was nothing like that going on at the time.
So what were big records, on big tech house records on Toolroom, and how did they come about?
We kind of came into the game around 2003, something like that, and as we've talked about, we identified pretty early we wanted to be a label that made playable records, or put out playable records, but with moments in them. And very much at that early stage, 2003, the kind of in vogue genre was electro house. So we kind of took a lot of records, again, still with a tech house kind of bass line and beat to it, and kind of rode with whatever was kind of flavour of the month or flavour of the year that particular year. 2003-4 was electro house, and for us, big records we signed were Dave Spoon at Night, you know, Bart B. Moore, So It Goes. Signed records like Yin from Wolfgang Gartner, Francis Privé, and then we also looked into other genres, and we identified quickly, like we spoke about, tech house is a melting pot, so we looked at other genres like progressive side of tech house. Mark and Dean came with Colombian Soul. Mark then recorded a track called Stopover with Dirty South, another big kind of progressive tinged record.
And Colombian Soul, I mean, it had elements in there that definitely touched on other genres. You know, you had the sort of driving bass line, you know, that was very techno driven, and then you had a riff in there that was very progressive and trancey, even, that touched a different fan base at the time. And
that was the thing, it was all about appealing to as many of those fan bases as possible, but, you know, still keeping that signature sound which we believe is tech house. You know, we went on and did other things within more minimal tracks. For example, Shlomi Eber's Blonder. You know, at the time, minimal. You know, moving into kind of 2006, 2007, it was very big sound, minimal. You know, we signed Roadkill, Dubfire's track, which was a big track in Miami for that particular year, and you know, that was his first kind of precursor into moving into the techno world. So we appealed to another base of fans there, and then. Something we've also been quite well known for as a label is kind of updating classics, the more kind of bootleggy tech house records. You know, started with things like Man with the Red Face, Adam, Funk Agenda did, you know, the Star 69 update, What the Fuck, and up until recently we did the Kevin Saunderson, the soundtrack with the J Lumen mix. So we're quite good at kind of reigniting old records and giving them a new kind of tech house spin on it, whatever the genre really.
I think Toolroom has been very influential on the whole tech house genre. I think Toolroom actually made it bigger. I think Toolroom kind of proved that it's not only for teeny tiny spaces or very specific audience. I think they kind of opened up the market to to show that you can make very cool tech house driven music, but still make it interesting for a larger audience. I think they've done a great job.
But what Toolroom have always done, and this is definitely comes from Mark's influence on the label, like knowing Mark and knowing how he thinks. Like, I know that this is the mark that he's left, which is he's always questioned, where is the moment in the track? Where is the point? What are we leading up to? What is the thing that is the payoff in the record? And with him constantly insisting that has to be how things have gone, it's pushed all the people that produce on the label to just go that extra few yards to just make the record a little bit more special. And I think that's directly influenced a lot of people like like Umek and Alex Kenji and people like that. They managed to make techie records, but that have riffs or that have a moment or that have a real build or something, and that's definitely, I think, Toolroom's legacy. They're straddling different sections of the market. Like, though people who are tech house purists probably don't want to hear vocals or they don't want to hear a riff, so Toolroom have got that covered. They've got key artists like Manuel de la Mer and Stefano Noferini and people like that, who produce really good quality, sort of more techno-ended tech house. But then at the same time, they're able to branch out into big records, you know, things like Mark's remix of Florence and the Machine, or, stuff like that, that's got, big riffs, big moments, big vocals. And then at the same time, they've got a great sort of core bunch of deep house producers as well. So now it's almost like they're catering for the terrace, they're catering for the nightclub, and they're catering for the sort of pre-party / after party, And being able to straddle those three markets and do it without sacrificing quality, I think it's a real sort of testament to a well-run label.
This is Toolroom 10. A decade of hits brought to you by one of the world's most influential dance labels. 100 definitive club tracks mixed by Mark Knight. Featuring deadmau5, Teed, David Guetta, Tiesto, Underworld and many more. 100 tracks, 10 years, one iconic label. 10 from Toolroom Records. Available on iTunes now.